Hey guys, welcome to episode 8 of the Neowin podcast. I'm Rich Woods.
And I'm Jean Carrasqueira, and we had some interesting stuff this week.
Yeah, it was a slow week, but like I said, it's a juicy week. You
Yes,
know,
a bunch of things.
what did you do this week? Tell me about your week.
It was a good week because I got a review unit for a phone, and I'm just really excited to.
Phone did you get?
to it's the Red Magic 3. It's a gaming phone from Nubia, so it's a
Gaming phone.
Chinese. Yeah, it's one of those gaming smartphones,
What kind of
like
specs does it have?
so. It's got the Snapdragon 855, as you'd expect, of course.
Yeah,
8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage. It has a cooling fan. That's what it drew me to it the most. It's a phone
that's
with a
interesting.
cooling. Yeah, that's why I wanted to get it because it seems so very interesting. No other phone that I know of has
Yeah.
a cooling fan. Aside from the Asus ROG phone that had like the slap-on accessory that also had a fan, but it wasn't built in. So
All those mainstream gaming phones like Razer and the Asus, they still all have the Snapdragon 845. So
uh,
that should be pretty interesting.
Yeah, the movie has the advantage there. The other one with the 855, I think Xiaomi's Mike Shark also has one, but it doesn't have that
Yes.
fan. So
Yes.
it's
Yeah, and they have a lot of gaming improvements in the 855, so that should be pretty cool.
yeah, I don't play a lot of games on my phone. I got Asphalt 9 just for the sake of testing this now,
You should get
and
PUBG.
uh, but I'm not very good at
You don't have to
online
be good
games.
at it. You just have to play it and see how it goes on the phone. You know,
Yeah,
it's funny when I reviewed that what was it, the Legion that we were just talking about, and I
yeah.
posted the Battlefields gameplay videos. And people commented about it, like you shouldn't be playing video games. Like, first of all, I'm not reviewing the game, so get over it.
Yeah,
I'm reviewing a PC with RTX graphics, and I'm trying to show ray tracing. You
yeah,
know, but
yeah. I
yeah,
guess I
you
need
just
to
got to
do
review
that.
performance.
Yeah,
So this
I
week, it's funny, right? I live on Long Island. You know what's a cool place on Long Island?
I know nothing.
Astoria. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so yeah, I was planning on that segue. It didn't really fit very well, but yeah, so Sunday story broke from Forbes about how Microsoft's foldable device may run Android apps. So we've
And
heard about
all,
this before with Project Astoria, and then
yeah,
that got
very
killed in the
familiar.
early days of Windows 10. So tell us about the full report because there was some other stuff in there too.
Yeah, okay. So the report comes apparently from this market research company, IHS Market. They have some source there. And so, for one thing, it said that you can run Android apps, which is like you were saying, a very familiar story for Windows fans. And it says it's going to have two 9-inch displays, 4:3 aspect ratio, which is interesting,
I saw.
and always on
Now,
connectivity. Yeah,
now those displays are 4x3 each, right?
yeah, it seems like that, and it makes sense because if you put two 4:3 displays by side and they're
You get a
vertical,
big 3x2 display. Yeah.
exactly, and that's the surface screen aspect ratio they always do. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
It makes some sense if so. There's that, and it's two displays, so it's not just one like Lenovo is doing with their foldable display. And it's good that it kind of clarifies what Microsoft is doing because over the past year and a half, probably, we got these constant patents coming out, and some of them have two, some of them have one, some of them have three because there's like a display in the hinge or something.
Right.
So
Right.
this seems like it could clarify what Microsoft is actually planning to release. So that's interesting.
The first thing that made me skeptical about this report was that it came from Forbes, and Forbes is awful.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm not afraid to say that. It's um, very very like we have a saying that friends don't let friends read Forbes for Microsoft news, and like that doesn't mean it's not true. It's just it makes me skeptical of the report in general just based on where it came from, and it almost seems like one of those reports where it kind of confirms previous reports, and then they just kind of say like, oh, and we've confirmed it with sources or whatever. Um, I don't know
Yeah.
about Android apps though. To me, Android apps make no sense. Does it make sense to you?
Uh, that's a complicated question. I don't think I would use them. That not personally,
Right.
but a lot of people do. There's so many Android emulators on Windows. It's crazy. And I'm not sure what people use them for, but they're there. So,
That's true.
uh, I think there's probably some use for it for some people. Otherwise, it wouldn't be such a big deal. And I mean,
Um,
it's probably
yeah.
easier. It's probably easier now since we have a full Linux kernel shipping with Windows 10 now for the WSL.
Yeah, and
So
I think that's where some of the rumors got started, which is that the Linux kernel started shipping, or they announced it, and they said, well, they could do Android with this. And it made a lot more sense to me in the old Project Astoria days, where it made more sense to me when Windows Phone was a thing, because Windows Phone had a severe lack of apps, and so if you had one, you were gonna have this option of side loading an Android app, at the very least side loading an Android app if Microsoft didn't provide its own method through the store, and that would at least provide for that one or two apps that you really need that you couldn't get on Windows Phone. On Windows for PCs, to me it just makes no sense. I don't
yeah,
understand.
on
I don't know.
PCs no, but maybe this is like setting up something like Andromeda. I don't know if it still exists. Andromeda
Andromeda's
is.
dead. It's
Yeah,
it's for the most part. This is Centaurus
yeah,
and
it's another thing. Yeah,
yeah, I
but
mean, I mean, two 9-inch displays. That's probably kind of interesting. I don't know what the size of the display is if it's unfolded at 3 by 2. I haven't done the math, but
yeah,
yeah, it just doesn't. I don't know, something about this just doesn't add up to me. I
I
don't think
guess
it'll have LTE or 5G if it's running an Intel CPU.
yeah. I don't. What this is the Lake Field is that thing they have now, the that weird integrated sort of, right? It's that weird chipset they have now.
Yeah, yeah, and
I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, Microsoft doesn't do LTE very well. It doesn't do cellular very well at all. And doing it with an Intel chip, I don't know. I'm skeptical. But
Yeah,
mostly what I'm skeptical is Android apps, because I don't think it makes sense. I don't see why they would do this. On Windows, I think on Windows most people work through a browser. That's why I've commonly said that most apps that people want in the Windows Store don't make sense. And I know you use them like Twitter,
yeah,
but I use a browser tab for Twitter. I use a browser tab for Facebook, Facebook Messenger, Google Hangouts. You know,
yeah.
the, go ahead.
I just think that there, maybe not everyone is like that. And like I said, there's all those Android emulators. There's a big market just for that. So there's probably someone out there who cares about running Android apps.
Right.
And
This
I
is but
mean,
this is adding another app platform to Windows.
yeah, that's
It's kind of admitting failure to building out your own app platform and bringing in somebody else's.
I mean, it's not like they haven't failed anyway. So
All right, here's a crazy theory, right? Crazy. All right, so so I've said many times before that I would like for Microsoft to use Chromium OS and build a Chrome OS competitor that's basically Chrome OS, except instead of Chrome, it has the new Edge, and instead of Google Drive, it has OneDrive, and it's basically Chrome OS with Microsoft services. They could do that. Um, everybody I've talked to says that they wouldn't, because they're not going to switch from Windows. But what if they did, right? And they started building these Edge books, but Chromium OS comes with that Android layer, so that's going to run Android apps. So now they add Android app support into Windows because you can't have this one thing that has Android app supports and this other thing that doesn't.
That's I mean, it could be interesting, but I think I'm on the side of the people that say that they wouldn't. It would be interesting, but it's a shift I don't expect from Microsoft.
No, I don't expect it at all. I'm just I really want them to build some kind of edgebook like that. It's every time someone sends me a Chromebook to review, it's like this is great, except I don't I don't want to run Chrome. I don't want to use Google Drive. So, but I mean, other than that, Android apps to me on Windows. I understand that there are lots of Android emulators out there, and Microsoft has their own Android emulators with Visual Studio and stuff. It's just I don't think it's going to be seen as a real benefit to the platform.
Maybe not. It is one of those things that I think will have a limited appeal.
Yeah,
but I don't know. Microsoft does weird stuff.
It'll sound right. It makes no sense. So that means they're going to do it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a strange thing. And then here's the next story, right? Which was from Brad Sams. And by the way, if it wasn't for the Excalibur thing, I wouldn't have even written it up because most of it's not new. So, couple things. There's Microsoft is working on an ARM-based Surface Pro, an AMD Ryzen-based Surface laptop, and Excalibur, according to Brad, is a custom chip that's custom designed for Windows 10, and so that's going to be in the Surface Pro 7, and then there will of course be Intel versions of the Surface Pro 7. And what didn't make sense to me was just the idea of a custom ARM chip that they worked with Qualcomm on, just because the Snapdragon 8CX is already custom designed for Windows 10, and that's coming later this year in the same time frame that this custom chip would be coming. So it just seems like a strange move to me to make another custom chip, especially when Qualcomm usually announces these chips like 8 months ahead of time at its Snapdragon Summit.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean it is weird timing. We didn't even have any HCX devices now, and
Right. Right. HCX
so,
devices should be coming later on this year. So why would we have a custom chip that's similar to the HCX, I guess? It just seems very odd to me. So I was thinking that it's actually the HCX, and maybe we have this maybe we have a cellular variant of the Surface Pro 7 that has an HCX, which would make sense since it's supposed to be on par with a Core i5, and then we have the Intel versions that are Wi-Fi only.
um, I am with you. It's weird that they're using this code name for a chipset that we already know of.
Yeah.
So it's strange that they would do that, but it's also strange that they'd announce another chipset. Like you said, why build a custom one when this one is already designed just for Windows 10 anyways? So
Yeah.
it is a strange story.
It could be off. It could be that Excalibur is actually the code name for the device that's using an HCX.
That'll make more sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would suspect that that's the cellular variant, but what could be good, like Microsoft is really bad at cellular, like really bad. People don't realize how bad Microsoft is at cellular.
Yeah, I have no idea. Why is it so bad?
I don't know why. I just know they are really bad at it. So first of all, anytime there's a cellular version of a Surface, which we've had the Surface Go, Surface Pro 5, Surface 2, and Surface 3 have all had cellular variants. And they all ship like 6 months after the fact. 6 months after the Wi-Fi only one. And then
Yeah, that's true.
yeah, and then when the Surface Pro 5 came out, which I had the scoop on all of that, and they used a Snapdragon X16 modem which supports gigabit speeds, and they started boasting that it had 450 megabits per second. So the guy I was talking to couldn't give me a straight answer as to why it was capped at 450 megabits per second, and he basically said like, "Oh, we can just flip a switch and turn on gigabit, but no one needs that." And I'm like, what? No one needs that. Oh, well, if you want to stream 4K Netflix, all you need is 25 megabits per second. You don't need a gigabit. Okay. And then I talked to some other guys, and they're like, no, it's just because Microsoft can't design antennas. They just can't do it. So they are bad at cellular. And now I wonder if they're working closely with Qualcomm to design this device, they could have better antenna design because they can't do it on their own. And so the cellular chip is built into the HCX, and so it could work better than using a cellular modem with an Intel chip and doing it all on their own.
Yeah, hopefully. Intel laptops with LTE aren't that great, are they? Is it? What's I don't know. I don't. I feel like
Here's the
it'd
thing.
probably be better if you have the
I've used both, and I'd say you're right that the switching between Wi-Fi and LTE isn't quite as seamless or not as fast. I've had some connectivity issues with Intel ones, and I don't know if that's an issue with working with Intel or if it's just the way the antennas are designed on those units. And it's really strange. I'll open up a PC and it'll say no service. I'm like, what no service? And like I know there should be cellular service here. And that's a problem though, because with LTE, you expect to have internet connectivity wherever you are. So when you turn it on, you have no service. You're like, I can't count on this thing. That's a big problem. Um,
yeah, yeah. That reminds them.
right. I've,
Yeah.
I've, I've, I've also, I've also used both generations of the Qualcomm chips, the 835 and the 850, and three PCs, which is the Lenovo Mix 630. That was the 835 one, and the for the 850 generation, I had the Galaxy Book 2 and the Lenovo Yoga C630. And uh, cellular is a lot more consistent, but obviously the performance isn't quite there, especially on the 835. The 835 sucks. So the 850 is usable, especially if especially if you have native browsers. That's the biggest issue. But hopefully the 850, the HCX can solve some of that. If the power is really there, and then you have the integrated cellular modem, that could be a good thing.
Yeah, and I mean, they also have ARM-based browsers coming out now, so that's
Yes.
definitely gonna help.
Well,
Both.
hopefully Edge gets here. I mean, I've been using a little bit. I've been using the leaked um, native ARM Credge.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
and it's pretty good. I was using Firefox, which is native on ARM now, and they showed me Chromium running on ARM like in like October. Like, come on, we need to get this out there. You
yeah,
know?
it's taking a long time.
Yeah.
Chrome still doesn't either, right? It's only
Chrome,
Firefox.
no. Chrome maybe eventually. I mean, it's Chromium that's being held up, really. So it's like once Chromium is there, though, it really should be all Chromium-based browsers.
Oh yeah, hopefully everyone will get on board at that point. But
So
most importantly, Edge really needs to be there. If Microsoft wants to provide a good experience out of the box, they really have to have Edge running
yeah,
up.
yeah, and one thing that's cool about the idea of an ARM-based Surface is that Microsoft really is taking this seriously. Because I think we talked about it before that there are very few ARM-based PCs out there in the world. Some of these things have sold, but I mean not many, not compared to Intel. So developing for that is not going to be a priority for most companies. So with Microsoft pushing it, that should be a really good thing.
Yeah, they really have to kickstart it, and I hope they do, because we've talked about this before. Our devices are fairly exciting. The always on connectivity, the instant
Yeah.
wake.
Well,
So
just
it
Windows
really,
on a new platform, like I'd love to see some competition for Intel, and Intel's been kind of coasting for years now. Ever
that's
since I guess Skylake, and because then we had Kaby Lake R, Whiskey Lake, and they've all been kind of the same. They added more cores, and like there's hasn't been a real change to the architecture until now. Ice Lake that's coming up, and it's nice to see that they have to move if they want to keep up.
yeah. They don't have a lot of competition for a long time. They didn't really have AMD. Is not very relevant either.
Yeah.
So now Qualcomm's really challenging them, and that's good. Everyone needs competition. That's just better for everyone. So
Right. Yeah, and another thing is that at we talked about this a couple of weeks ago is Lenovo's Project Limitless, which is the Snapdragon 8CX 5G PC that's coming in 2020, and they announced this thing that with no details, but that's not going to be the first 8CX 5G Windows 10 PC. There is going to be one later on this year, so that could be the Surface, and that could be why the Lenovo got announced first. So it would be pretty interesting to see a Surface Pro 7 5G.
yeah, I have a hard time imagining Microsoft being first to something like that because
Yeah,
they usually
especially
are
stuff like
pretty
cellular.
late. Yeah, but that would be very interesting. But I don't know. I don't see it being Microsoft being the first one to that. But who knows? I mean,
Yeah, yeah. Who knows? It like it fits, except for the fact that Microsoft is bad at cellular. Um,
exactly.
Yeah, I mean they're not always last in everything. They're. I'd like to. I think they like to think that they're smart in what they implement first and what they don't. Like the new form factors, obviously they're first. Surface Book has still not been replicated across the board. Surface Studio, I had that Lenovo, but obviously they're not first in things like Thunderbolt 3 or using new CPUs. They're always last in using new CPUs now, but that's because they got burned by Skylake.
Oh
And
yeah, that did not go well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I don't know. Maybe they don't know how bad at cellular they are, and they're planning 5G.
Maybe.
That's the thing. Surface really should push the limits, and it really, the thing is, like we talked about it. I think it was when the new H series processors came out, and we had this whole range of gaming PCs and mobile workstations that came out because when a new chip comes out, all the OEMs line up to refresh their products because you can't keep selling your PC with an old CPU in it. So the only one that doesn't is Microsoft. So you end up with these Surfaces with old chips where everybody else has the latest generation. So I mean they can't keep doing that.
Yeah, and then the surfaces are way more expensive, so it's impossible to justify getting a surface over any of the competitors.
Oh, I have no idea why anybody would ever buy a Surface.
Exactly.
There's like in any category, there's something better out there. So yeah, yeah. Let's move on to the next one. Bill
Yeah, I don't even.
Gates says missing mobile was a mistake. I love stories like this, by the way, because they just come up once in a while. Like every, I don't know, 6 months or so, Bill Gates or Steve Ballmer does an interview and then someone says, like, what do you think of missing mobile? And they say something like, it was a mistake. And it's a big story. Missing mobile was a mistake.
Yeah,
It's
it does seem to be a recurring thing. Now that you mention it, something like this always comes up every now and again.
absolutely. It's like Apple products and Steve Wozniak. And like anytime there's an Apple product, there's going to be a story about a month later about what Steve Wozniak thinks about it. Except this is the exact same thing over and over again.
Yeah, because
This is
we just can't let go.
it's not about a new product. Well, 'cause the thing about Microsoft and mobile is that they it's almost it's a really fascinating case when you look at it. They had a lead. They've been making smartphones since the early 2000s. Since like the handheld PCs since the Windows CE days, like a long time. They should have won this, and
Yeah,
they
and
didn't.
they yeah. What where do you think they went wrong? I have to ask. What I mean, there's a lot of factors, obviously, but to you, what like stands out the most as what ruined Windows Phone
I'm
for
glad you
them?
asked because I'm very opinionated on the subject. Here's what I think went wrong. Well, one they didn't look for at consumers when it started. Where Steve Ballmer famously mocked the iPhone. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, and that's fine though because um, what else was he supposed to say in that situation? Yeah, like you have your own mobile market, right? Windows Mobile was a thing, and then the iPhone comes out. What are you going to say? Like, no, their product is much better than ours. Like a CEO can't say that.
yeah.
Uh, but what they should have been doing was paying more attention to the market, and instead they said, well, how are you can't send emails without a keyboard. All touchscreen. That's ridiculous. Businesses are never going to like it, and they were looking at businesses and not realizing that consumers would play a huge role in the smartphone market. But the biggest problem that I saw, because I've been covering Microsoft and Windows Phone since like 2012 or 2013 or something, and the biggest problem that I always saw was that they always put PC first, right? In a market where you have three companies with for argument's sake, we're going to say unlimited resources. The two that win are Apple and the other company that uses the most resources. Google was able to put mobile first always because they didn't have a PC operating system with 1.5 billion PCs out there. So a lot of people would say to me, because I pointed this out before, and people would say, oh, they have 1.5 billion PCs. They can't just ignore them. But they never put mobile first. And they always had this other thing that was more important. So they never focused on it more than Google did. And that was to me the biggest issue.
That yeah, that is I can't really say much because I wasn't following Microsoft's mobile efforts until like 2014, 15.
Yeah.
So I don't know
2014 when they finally let you add an image as a wallpaper. No,
exactly.
no, but seriously though, because you look at they would do these things. They would do these things and like all right, late 2014 they announced Windows 10, right? So what was it? September 30th, 2014, I believe.
Yeah.
And the first preview came on October 1st. Um, they announced Windows 10. They announced it for PCs. Something's going to come for phones later. The first insider preview is coming for PCs tomorrow. And that was just priorities were wrong. If you want phones to succeed, phones have to come first. You know.
Yeah, that makes sense. I never thought about it that way. But yeah, it's
Well, that's because no one
so
thinks about it that way. The way that people think about it is, oh, they didn't market it correctly. Oh, they didn't have the apps, or oh, everybody had chosen sides, and which is crap. I almost said something else because no one had chosen sides. Like Windows Phone 7 launched in 2010, okay, and most people didn't even have a smartphone in 2010. There was plenty of time to get this right, and they didn't. You
yeah,
know.
yeah, your theory makes sense. They're just I don't think they understood for a long time just how big the smartphone market was. And because for the, I guess, like you were saying, for the most part of the beginning of the century and the past decade, smartphones were business only. So
Right.
normal people didn't care about smart features at all. But
No.
then the iPhone came around and it just really made all those things mainstream. And Microsoft just kept riding the boat. They just kept thinking, this is just for businesses. It's a separate thing.
Yeah. Well,
And
here's the thing, right? After Steve Ballmer goes and says that in 2007, what does Microsoft do? They go to the drawing board and they figure out a way to compete with this. And in 2020 and 3 years later, Windows Phone 7 launches. So his actions did not match his words at the time. But I think he said what a CEO had to say. You know, um,
Yeah,
but yeah, uh, it's very frustrating. Here's another thing about Windows Phone, right? You had a Windows Phone, right?
I had two Windows phones.
Which ones did you have?
I had the Lumia 820. It was my first Windows phone. It was a used one.
Okay.
So I got that in 2014, 13. I don't remember.
Mhm.
I got that, and then I got a Lumia 640
Okay.
shortly afterwards.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you if you had a certain issue that I always noticed. So everybody always said like, oh, but Windows Phone is better, and I said, is it? Like in concept, there's a lot of great ideas. This idea of hubs and like remember you had, I think it was the people. I don't even remember anymore, but there was one where it was a combined social media feed between Facebook and Twitter and like the messaging app you could send messages through other services. It was hubs and all of your services were combined into these different hubs and it was fantastic. It was a fantastic idea. It was a very smooth OS, but at the same time I would take a picture and then I'd go to post it on Facebook and it would say I had no data connection. Has that ever happened to you? Because I know it's happened to other people.
Well, I didn't use Facebook very much, so I can't
Okay.
say for sure.
Okay. All right.
But I don't remember having issues like that, sending pictures to in other platforms at least, like messaging apps. But
Yeah.
Facebook itself, I can't say for sure. I didn't post pictures very often.
I distinctly remember that problem because I would go on Facebook and it was and I'd be right next to my Wi-Fi router. I'd have 4 bars of LTE service. Like there was no reason that I shouldn't be able to post this picture. And that's it's a small thing, but it's super frustrating. And that's the kind of thing that will alienate users and say, I don't ever want a Windows phone again. And it was little stuff like that would here's another thing, right? You press the Windows key, takes you back to the start screen, and sometimes it would say loading for like a half a second before showing the start screen.
Oh,
Right?
that happened a lot. Yeah, that was
Yes,
very.
right. So can you imagine that happening with Android or iOS? Like it doesn't. You press the home key, whatever, or you swipe up on iPhone now, whatever, and it just goes right back to your home screen, and that's it. There's no loading.
And
And
there shouldn't be. That was a thing that is very hard to understand. That
right.
I think it got worse with Windows 10. I don't
I
think
think it did. Yeah.
it
Well, Windows 10 slowed a lot of things down, and
did.
that was another issue with the OS was that it was very text based. Everybody talked about it. It's light and fast and smooth, but the thing is, there's a lot of ththings that should have been graphical that weren't. Like, do you remember the settings menu in Windows Phone 8.1?
Oh yeah, that was a much needed improvement when Windows 10 came out. That was something that
Yeah,
I was
it
very
was
glad to see.
awful. Here's what I hated about it. He said there was different settings. Some of them will be updated through the store. I don't remember if they all could be, but some of them could be. And when they were updated through the store, they dropped to the bottom of the list. So you couldn't open settings and know where a certain settings would be because it could change. And it was just text based. So there's no icon next to it that indicates what you're looking at. And when they started adding these graphical elements, the OS rightfully became like the thing is it was such a light and smooth OS because it was lacking key features. And once you add, key features, it becomes weighted down like any other OS. And Windows 10 Mobile kind of did that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But there was some criticism towards Windows Phone that I remember seeing, and that I think was unjustified. Like the organization of the settings was bad, but I look at Android settings, and I mean it depends on the Android device you have. But up
Yeah.
until Nougat or something, it was also terrible. It was not. I mean, they couldn't change around like Windows Phone did. I didn't know that was a thing, but
Yeah.
but I don't think they also had icons for a long time, and they were also very disorganized for a long time. So
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
I heard those complaints when I had a Windows phone, but then sometime later I'd grab an Android phone with Marshmallow or Android Marshmallow or something, and it was awful too. So
Yeah,
there,
they still
there,
can be. Like the thing about Android is that it's skinned by the OEM. So I mean, even back then, like you could have one OEM that has a brilliant settings menu and one that just doesn't.
yeah.
Or one that doesn't like you. I guess the manufacturer probably had to do some work to make it nice, so most of them weren't. But yeah, I mean, rightfully so. There's a lot of complaints about Android too. Like, I could mention that Windows Phone, you couldn't take a screenshot until Windows Phone 8, and that was 2012. And Android didn't get that functionality either until not too long before that. Native functionality. I'm sure, again, OEMs built it in. But
I
yeah,
didn't even
rightfully
know.
so. What?
I didn't even know. Yeah, it depends. Android, I think it's also a recent thing on Android. Yeah,
Yeah.
relatively speaking.
Windows Phone 7, you could not take a screenshot. There's no way to do it.
The, I mean, I feel like that's such a basic feature nowadays.
Yeah,
Very.
it is. It
So,
is. So people love to take screenshots. So now it's getting fancy. Like you're getting editors for screenshots and in phones and stuff.
yeah.
But
But another thing I want to point out about Windows Phone that I miss because I have an Android phone now, and it's just notification settings were actually better on Windows 10 Mobile, at least compared
yeah.
to stock Android, which is that I have stock Android, and I'm thinking because on Android you can't really change the notification sounds per app. I think maybe you can. I'm not
Oh,
sure,
really?
but
I'm
there are
sure you
certain
can.
but
Android is
there are
very customizable.
but there are some things that I can't change. I was trying the other day. For example, on Windows Phone, you could have settings for having the banner pop up or just send it straight into the action center. If you want to have sound or not, no sound,
Yeah.
all that stuff you could customize not only as a global setting but per individual app. And I tried to do that on my phone now on Android, and I can't. The only option I get on any app is just turn it off or on, and then I can just turn off or on specific categories of notifications. But I can find a way to adjust all of those things individually. Like if I don't want it to be popping up on the screen while I'm using it or something like that, I can't
Yeah.
really do that. And Windows 10 Mobile had all those things for every app, and they were very consistent with that. And I started appreciating that more
There
after
were
I
a lot of good
realized.
things about Windows Phone, Windows 10 Mobile. I always love the pivoted interface of Windows Phone 7, Windows Phone 8, and just um, having that panoramic background and being able to swipe through all the swipe gestures and stuff. And it was good.
Yeah, I
You know,
like that too. And
Windows
I
10
like,
Mobile killed a lot of that stuff, though. You
but
know,
I mean, the panoramas, they were replaced with typable menus that I felt a lot of people criticize that, the way that it wasn't as panoramic as before. But you
yeah,
could still swipe at least, and I feel like that's something that's not possible in a lot of apps on
yeah.
Android and iOS. So that was still nice.
Yeah.
Uh,
You know what? One issue that happened was when Windows 10 Mobile launched, and we've talked about Microsoft communication issues because they promised Windows 10 Mobile upgrade to all Windows Phone 8.1, all devices running Windows Phone 8.1. That was Terry Myerson's exact words. And then they had insider previews for all of those devices. And that didn't happen. Right? It was
yeah,
pretty much any device that shipped with Windows Phone 8.1. So anything with Windows Phone 8 that had been upgraded to 8.1 didn't get the upgrade except for the ones with 8.1 hardware, which was like the Lumia 1520 and the Lumia Icon. And that was a big issue because at that point I think it was clear that they were kind of chopping things down a little bit. And Windows Phone had always used old hardware, which really annoyed me. Like the Windows Phone 8, the only chipset supported was the Snapdragon S4 Plus. Windows Phone 8.1, the only chip supported was Snapdragon 200, 400, and 800. So, like, they were using the Snapdragon S4 when Android was using the Snapdragon 800. They were using Snapdragon 800 when Android was using the 801 and the 805. It was very frustrating.
It was, and it's always been so weird how strict Microsoft has been with the system requirements. That I think that
Yeah.
probably played a part in how many phones were released because they were just trying to force manufacturers to use processors that weren't as good, and that kind of
Yeah.
sucked.
Well, yeah, you had these Nokia phones which had virtually the same specs, and it was like, 6 variants of it. There was, like the Lumia 630 and 635, 730, 735, 830, 640, 640 XL, all had a Snapdragon 400. Except for a variant of the 635, they all had 1 GB of RAM, and and except for the 630 and the 635, they all had 720p displays. You know, um, so there were minor variances between these devices, but
Yeah,
yeah, and the
it
Snapdragon
is.
400 is not good.
No, it isn't. It's not.
Yeah,
But yeah, there were a lot of weird decisions with Windows 10,
yeah,
Windows Phone as a whole. I mean, but
right.
I mean, it's sad. And I remember that thing you were talking about with the phones that were dropped from the list. It's really unfair because you had these phones put on the beta version, and then suddenly those people were told that they can't
Right,
get
and
the
you got to
final
use the
version.
Windows Device Recovery tool to go back. Yeah.
That's a terrible idea, and I think that probably just really breaks people's trust. And when you can,
Well, it really
when
did, and they screwed over a lot of customers a lot of times, right? And because that's the thing, they didn't tell anybody that they were dropping these devices until the update shipped. It was March 17th, 2016, if I'm not mistaken, and I only know that because I searched for articles, like the article about when it launched, and I know which dates to search for, and like March 16th, everybody thought that all Windows Phone 8.1 devices would get an upgrade because that's what Microsoft had promised. And then they said, like, oh no, we never said that. Like, yeah, you did.
it,
Like there's video evidence of Terry Myerson saying this. So
yeah,
there was
it's
that.
terrible. It's terrible. You can't serve betas to a device and then just all of a sudden decide that you can't have this after all, and you have
Well,
to roll back because there was no other way to keep going. You have to reset your phone to be able to get on a supported version.
yeah, they did something similar with Windows Phone 8 too. Like they promised an upgrade path for Windows Phone 7, and it's funny that like in April 2012, the Lumia 900 launched, which is the flagship Windows Phone 7.5 device. And they had Nokia had this whole ad campaign. The smartphone beta test is over, and that was April. And in September 2012, the Lumia 920 and Windows Phone 8 launched. So this flagship phone was dead in 5 months. It's crazy if you look at the timeline for some of this stuff. You know.
So some things are just unjustifiable, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's it's terrible. I remember being glad because my Lumia 820 is actually stolen from me, and I
Oh
was very
yeah.
sad about that. But then I got the 640, and then the news came out that the 820 wasn't gonna get the Windows 10 update after
Yeah.
all, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess something good came from that because I wasn't going to be able to get Windows 10. So
Nice. Nice. Yeah, a lot of mistakes, there's a yeah, but you know what I always thought was a problem? One more thing that I want to mention, that I always thought Nokia was a problem. I always thought they were a big problem for Windows Phone because I would review these phones from third-party manufacturers, and people, and they would be awesome phones. Like the Yes Billy 4.7, I was in love with this device, and it was cheap. It was a Snapdragon 200 device, and it was just so good. Except for like the performance issues that come with the Snapdragon 200, but that was okay because it was a light operating system. So um, and people would comment like, "No thanks, I'm gonna get a real Windows phone," and what they meant was a Nokia Lumia, and that's a big problem for an ecosystem. If one brand is seen as the only real product in that ecosystem, like that's a big problem because now third party manufacturers have no reason to make a device for a Windows phone. You know,
That's true, and there weren't really many devices aside from the
well,
small brands like Yeds and
well,
Blue.
HTC did a few, and HTC was bigger back in the day.
That's true. HTC had
You
some
know,
really good phones.
they did.
The one M8,
Yeah,
and they even supported the dot view case and stuff
it did.
with the
Yeah,
M8.
they
So that
had
was,
full support. They had blink view, all the stuff that HTC was doing at the time. They did it on Windows Phone,
but
and
it's like yeah, but it's like you said people just thought of Nokia as that one brand, and
yeah,
HTC deserved a lot better because they put
yeah.
some real effort into that.
Yeah.
And
And
I think they were
Samsung too. Samsung had the Ative SE, which was on Verizon. That was a Windows Phone 8.1 device with a Snapdragon 800. And so that was a good one. But I mean, they like, why would anybody besides Nokia make a phone when Nokia dominates the Windows Phone?
yeah,
It's
that's
tough.
true.
And
I almost felt
Microsoft gave
like
them. Go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna reiterate that I almost felt HTC deserved more because I think the one I made had the Snapdragon 801, right? It was the only Windows
Yes.
phone with a Snapdragon 801. So that was interesting. And no one cared. People just wanted it's Nokia everything. I mean, I
Yeah.
love the design of Nokia phones, I'm not gonna lie. But
But
competition is important, and no other brands are trying to do it because everyone just cared about Nokia.
here's the problem with the one M8. Unpopular opinion, not a good phone. It, it was a good Windows phone, but here's the thing: the camera was not good and the display was not good. And the display was not talked about a lot with the one M8, but the white balance was totally off, and almost to where things that should be white looked tinted green. And
Uh,
but the big problem was the camera because Windows Phone users loved their cameras. We loved our PureView cameras. So if you're going to put out a Windows Phone, it's got to be able to compete with PureView. So that was like the flaws that I saw on that device, and but still, like when Microsoft bought Nokia, I thought they were gonna when they started cutting back the lineup. I thought they were gonna kill it and build it back from the ground up, just because that first party system, calling Nokia a first party brand, which is what I came to call it. I thought they were gonna kill it and build it back up, just so they don't have that problem of Lumia's being the only real Windows phone, and they could actually create an ecosystem of partners. Never happened. Never happened.
Sadly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Windows 10 Mobile we had even fewer devices, I think. I mean, we did have an HP, which was nice. But
Yeah. Yeah.
we actually,
Was there?
there
Oh
were a
yeah, the
couple
Elite
with,
X3.
yeah,
Forgot about that.
that was a good one. I also was very interested in the Alcatel Idol 4S. I found like that was a,
That
yeah,
was a lovely device. See,
that one
that's the
looked
thing.
very nice.
Yeah,
And
the
again,
Elite X3, I didn't love so much. Like it had great order. The camera was awful. Camera was awful on the Alcatel too. The Idol 4S. Yeah,
4S.
it had different names in the U.S. and in other places. I think it was the Idol 4S for Windows 10 or something.
Yeah, something
And
like that, yeah.
yeah, because that had a beautiful AMOLED display. It was an awesome device. You know. By the way, speaking of ARM, speaking of ARM PCs and the ACX, it's supposed to have the performance of an i5. This just reminded me of it because when the Elite X3 came out, they pushed the whole continuum thing. And because remember, HP had HP Workspace, which was virtualized Win32 apps that you would basically stream through the cloud,
Yeah.
and you could run Chrome in Continuum on the Elite X3. It was pretty cool. You had to pay a subscription service for it, but I remember they said, and Qualcomm said, that the Snapdragon 820 is on par with an Intel Core i3, and so that was a lie. I don't know. I mean, considering the advancements that have been made since then, and the fact that they've not caught up to a Core i5 until the 8CX, I'm guessing that wasn't true. You know, and it makes me skeptical about those claims.
Yeah, I don't know either. Continuum was another thing. They promised so much for it, but then they killed a lot
Yeah.
of things.
You
So
know, you know what's so funny though? Like they when HP sent me the Elite X3, when this thing finally came out, because they announced it like over a year before it came out, and they sent it to me, and I was the only one writing articles about, hey, this camera is not going to be good, because at the time everybody was focused on megapixels, and everybody's like, oh, 20 megapixels is going to be great. I think it was 20 megapixels. I don't remember.
I think so. Yeah.
Like, it's gonna be great, megapixels, and I'm like, dude, no, like, look at the specs for this camera. Doesn't say anything about autofocus technology. There's, it has a smaller aperture. Like, it's not gonna be good. And it came out. Sure enough, it wasn't good. And, I remember I wrote an email to HP like something about doing a camera comparison with an iPhone, and I got this email back from them, man, and they're telling me like, this is not a phone. This is a 3-in-1 PC. It said there's no reason why you would write anything comparing this to an iPhone, and it was basically like, these things shouldn't even be on the same desk.
Yes.
This is not a phone. It's a 3-in-1 PC. I'm like, okay, guys, no one's gonna use this as a phone, right? And
and no one was going to. It was. I mean, HP made a few smartphones, I believe, not many. Like Android, and they're always terrible. So that should have been expected.
Yeah. Well, It's. I mean, I just thought it was funny that like, because they really tried to position these things as PCs. And the thing is, if you want to position a phone as a PC, it also has to be good at being a phone, and that was the problem. So, enough about Windows Phone. Unless there's something you wanted to add, let's talk about OneDrive.
No, let's move on. We already.
Yeah, we did a lot, and like, it's just so much fun to talk about, and like all these things that went wrong. So you can now upgrade your OneDrive storage, right? If you're on the paid OneDrive storage plan, the $199 a month one, you get 100 gigabytes now instead of 50 gigabytes, which is cool. Nothing you need to do. If you're on Office 365, you get 1 terabyte, and now you can increase it to up to 2 terabytes, which will be $9.99 a month, although it's in 200 gigabyte increments of $199 a month each. Yeah. So the first 200 gigabytes is $199, and each 200 gigabytes on top of that is actually $2, but whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, about time, really.
It's dumb that they're stopping you at 2 terabytes. Amazon I think it's $10 a month per terabyte, and you can go up as far as you want. So why can't I pay $20 a month for 2 extra terabytes? It's just weird that they're limiting people.
Yeah, that is an unnecessary limitation. I don't know why they're doing that. If we're gonna charge anyway, just let people pay as much as they want. I mean, more money.
And here's another thing, right? So Office 365 home use. If you have Office 365 personals for one person, you get a terabyte of OneDrive storage. That's it. Office 365 home, though, that's for 6 people, and each person on that plan gets a terabyte of OneDrive storage. If you increase your storage, it's only for the primary account holder. So the other 5 people don't even have the option of getting more storage, which is also dumb.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's why you could pay it's $99 a year, and you're getting a total of 6 terabytes of OneDrive storage. So now you're going to pay an extra $120 for just one person to get an extra terabyte. I've always thought that they should just allow you to allocate your 6 terabytes however you want. Where maybe one person needs a lot, so they get 3 terabytes, and then the other 5 people get like 500 gigabytes each.
That would make sense. That would be nice. But I guess that would make too much sense for Microsoft.
Well, at this point, at this point, it wouldn't make at this point it would make sense now that they did this, because Office 365 Personal is $69.99 a year, and now you're going to add $9.99 a month, another $120. So now you get $190 a year. If they let you allocate your home subscription, your 6 terabytes, you could literally get 6 terabytes for $99 a year. So it kind of blows up that whole pricing structure. But back in the day, back in 2014, they had promised unlimited OneDrive storage. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I remember the story about them going back because people were just storing like pirated movies and whatever, like terabytes and terabytes
Yeah,
of.
yeah. They said people abused it, which was crap because you can't offer unlimited OneDrive storage and then say people abused it when they used their unlimited storage.
Yeah,
Um,
that's.
but yeah, so
I
that
guess
was what I
Microsoft just didn't plan for people.
yeah. That's what I said at the time, though. When they said that they're not doing it, I know they totally planned for it. But when they said they're not doing it, I said that like rather than just chopping everyone down to 1 terabyte, why don't you just let people allocate their? At the time, it was 5 terabytes in Office 365 Home, and at least ease the transition a little bit. But they didn't do that. But no, I say that they totally planned for it because I truly believe at this point that it was a bait and switch, which was sign up for Office 365. You're gonna have unlimited storage. Then a year later, sorry, no unlimited storage, but you're already signed up. So,
Might as well, yeah.
like it's a bait and switch. Like unlimited storage, unlimited cloud storage is not a reasonable option for any cloud storage provider. It makes no sense. Because not only do you have to provide that amount of storage, you have to provide redundant storage in multiple geographical locations. So if I have a server here at my house, and I have a terabyte of data, I got to put a terabyte of data here. I got to put a terabyte of data, on the server at your house, because if my house blows up, I can't lose your data. So, with multiple terabytes, it gets unreasonable. So unless they just had no clue that they just didn't project how much this stuff would cost at all, yeah, they totally knew.
Yeah, I think the way I see it is they just didn't think people would really use cloud storage, and they're just like one of those promises you make just because. But maybe it's like you're saying, a bait and switch would make sense. It would be sad,
Yeah.
but it would make sense. But I don't know. They should just let people scale. If you're gonna, I mean, of course you have to limit it. If you're just gonna charge $100 per year, you can't really give unlimited storage at that price. But just
Yeah.
let people scale. $100 more, you get another terabyte. I don't know. I don't care.
I thought at some point that, by the way, keep in mind that Apple sells 2 terabytes of iCloud storage for $9.99 a month. Apple. So just remember that. But I always thought that they would just increase the amount for Office 365 at some point, just because I mean this stuff has to get bigger over time. People's cloud storage, like people automatically upload their photos to OneDrive, and eventually this stuff just grows. And I just assume that as storage gets cheaper over time, that amount would just get bigger. So maybe it still will, but not right now.
Yeah, but I mean, it has been some time. I think it is in due time that they increase the maximum storage, especially if Apple is doing it.
Yeah.
If Apple is doing something that's cheaper than you're offering, then something is very weird.
It is very weird, yeah, 2 terabytes of iCloud storage for $9.99 a month. I gotta say, like, it might be. I don't know that Microsoft actually wants to be in the cloud storage business, and it's a perk of Office 365. If they got rid of OneDrive storage and Office 365, I would not subscribe to Office at all. That's the biggest thing that I use my subscription for. I'd be happy with Office Online.
Yeah, I can see that being a thing for a lot of people. I mean,
yeah,
because you can you pay just for 1 terabyte of storage without Office 365?
Nope, not anymore. So they're really not in the cloud storage business. By the way, the other part of this story was that they announced something called Personal Vault, and what that is, it's basically they call it a protected area in OneDrive, and it seems like it works just like a folder, and so you can use Windows Hello to access this, or any other kind of. You can use Microsoft Authenticator, Face ID on your iPhone, and it's strong authentication is what they call it, and that's what you would need to access this folder. So it's encrypted. If you have it synced to your device, it's encrypted with BitLocker, And yeah, personal vault coming soon to Australia, New Zealand, and Canada.
For
So
once, the United States are not first.
I know.
Interesting.
I read this, and the first thing I did was I texted Mary Jo, and I'm like, "What is this? How am I going to make fun of Zach?" you know. So I'm just gonna have to curse at Boyd. You know, Boyd Chan, he's our editor in Australia, and we love him. So
yeah. Just ask Boyd to make fun of Zach for you, I guess.
yes. Oh, you're a genius. Oh. Yeah, see, we just made a podcast description and we said that there's scheming that goes on. This is it. Perfect. That's it for OneDrive, I think. Unless you got anything to say about Personal Vault.
It seems interesting, but that's about it.
Told you we could do 5 stories in an hour, by the way.
Yeah, it's already. Yeah.
Just talk about the failure of Windows Phone and we can just go.
That could be like 2 episodes. I want
it really could. I could talk forever about the failure of Windows Phone. So Jony Ive is leaving Apple. This came up yesterday. Apple and by the way, do you like my title on that? Jony Ive is leaving Apple so he can contract for Apple. And I thought it was a little insensitive, and I told Pulaski, I'm like, you gotta tell me if this title is too much. It's like, nope, it's perfect.
It is. I think no one else mentioned this in their titles. It's just like he's leaving Apple, but he's still working for Apple.
Yeah.
No other title says that. So.
All right. So Jony Ive's leaving Apple as he's the chief design officer, and he's starting his own design company. And Apple's going to be his top customer at his independent company. So, I mean that's pretty much it, right? So starting his own company allows him to take on other projects. I don't know. What do you think? Like Jony Ive has been instrumental to Apple's design for 26 years, and particularly since 1996 when Steve Jobs returned and made him head of the design team. And he's obviously designed every iPhone. He's signed off on every design that Apple has produced. And so I don't know if this changes anything for Apple since they will be contracting his new company. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, it could change a little bit because I assume the rest of the design team is going to have to change unless he's taking the entire design team from Apple to his new company.
The VP of Industrial Design and the VP of Human Interface Design are going to report to the company's COO, Chief Operating Officer, Jeff Williams. So those guys are still there. You want to know what I think?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think they're better off without him.
Okay. Oh, okay. I thought the same thing actually. Kind of.
Talking about the whole form over function thing. You have an Apple mouse that charges with a lightning port underneath the mouse, so you can't even use it while it's charging. Yeah. I mean, come on. All right.
Some things are terrible. It's just
look at the colors of the iPhone XR. They're ugly, all of them except red and maybe yellow. They're ugly. You have the light cyan blue. Like, what about a nice deep navy blue iPhone? It would be beautiful, but they won't do it because they like these pastel colors. All right, like the iPhone 5C was the same story.
Yeah.
All right.
A lot of the design is weird. I don't think the iPhone has a particularly appealing design. I mean,
no.
I like the iPhone 10. I have to admit, I do like the design of the iPhone 10, the screen and stuff, but. Even then, it's like the back is just the same as every other iPhone has been. So
right. I'll tell you what I like and what I hate about the iPhone 10. And what I like about it, I definitely attribute to Jony Ive. And what I like is that the borders around the display are even throughout the device, except for obviously the notch. And no other phone does this. Everybody has mimicked the iPhone 10 with the notch and narrow borders, but everybody like the chin is a little bit bigger. No one has actually been able to create uniform bezels around the entire device, and I really appreciate that. What I hate about the iPhone is the massive notch, and the reason I hate that is because Android is moving beyond notches now with the pop-up camera on the OnePlus 6T or the hole punch display on the Honor View 20 and the Galaxy S10, and Apple's going to be stuck with this for probably another generation or two, because but I think that's really more of a technological issue that they really just can't keep up, as more than a design issue.
I don't know if that's it. I feel like they stuck to the design of the previous iPhone generations for so long. I don't know if it's because they can't, or they just don't want to seem like they're admitting that their design choices weren't the best ones. So they have to
No,
like
they
just
can.
stick with.
Historically, up until the iPhone 7 came out, they've redesigned the iPhone every 2 years. They could. Um, the iPhone 10 design has been there for 2 years now. They can redesign it now. They can they don't have to say it was wrong, because I don't think it was wrong 2 years ago. I think that this year it's wrong.
Yeah, if they do it again now,
Yeah,
it's gonna suck
so
because
they can improve on this design. Um,
the
like
notch is gigantic. That is.
it's very wide. But I will take that notch over a Pixel 3 XL notch any day.
That's true. That's true. But even then, this does suck because on my Nokia 7.1 I have the notch is like half the size, and even then I can only get two notifications icon at the top, and then it starts minimizing them into this little circle that just tells you there's more than what's there. And I hate that because it's just two icons. It just doesn't tell me much. Sometimes it only stuff that I don't even really care about, and then the stuff that I do care about is just hidden away.
I
And
completely
that only
agree.
on that. So even
Well,
a
here's the
small
thing:
notch.
you don't use iOS, right?
No, I
Because
don't.
they don't have notification badges up there like Android does, and though that was always a big problem for me with Android notches, but Apple doesn't have that issue with icon badges. Um, I don't mind the notch when I use an iPhone. It bothers me that they can't keep up with display technologies that are being used by the rest of the market.
Yeah, it is. It's just too big at this point. Like even last year, already got
Well,
notches so much smaller than what we had before.
here's the thing about that is that it's wide because it has sensors in
All
it
those
for
sensors,
Face
yeah.
ID, for and emojis and all that crap. Um, if you look at other phones that pack those sensors, they tend to have wide notches as well. I
Doesn't
think
the
the
P30 doesn't the P30 have that? No, there is
no,
another,
no,
but there is an
P30 is
Android phone that has it.
no. There's a Huawei phone too. I can't remember. I think it was the Mate 20 Pro that used the wide notch. Um,
Oh
and
yeah,
it
maybe.
makes sense. And really, um, you need these things for secure facial recognition. And Apple is one of very few that can actually do secure and fast facial recognition, because it's sensing depth. So I used to do this for product launches. I would take a selfie with a demo phone, and then I'd try to unlock the other phone, and most of the time it would work. Um, so you can't do that with an iPhone. There are some companies that look for tricks in lighting or movement, and they could look for natural movement, and that helps. But ultimately, you need those sensors, and so that makes sense. But I think notches are getting smaller on the Android side because most companies are moving toward in-display fingerprint sensors for biometric authentication. So if Apple can't pull that off, then that's the problem.
That yeah, but I still feel like Apple has some trouble with like s- uh, stepping away from the design choices they've made in the past. Like we had Touch ID for very long, and now and then we had to switch to Face ID just 2 years ago. Now if we're going back to fingerprints, I feel like
I know
they've been
that
saying,
does feel
yeah,
strange.
yeah, it's just like it's like they're saying, maybe face recognition isn't really what it should have done, and they rarely say something like that, right? I mean.
Right. They rarely go back on, and almost rightfully so, because but most of their decisions are very well thought out, and that's why they tend to be a little further behind Samsung in some cases, because they're two very different companies. Samsung tries to be first at everything. You know, Apple tries to be right in everything. Like
Yeah.
it's easy to be first if you don't care about getting it right. And
Like the Galaxy phones.
yes, exactly like the Galaxy Fold. My mind always goes to the Galaxy S4 and the Galaxy S5, and they started loading these things up with all these ridiculous features. They didn't work well, and but you know what? Um, every time an iPhone launches, memes float around the internet that say like, "Oh, welcome to 2012, Apple." You know, um, when they introduced the fingerprint sensor in the iPhone 5S, like, oh, Samsung has had this for 5 years. Like, you know what? Samsung fingerprint sensors were awful until Apple did Touch ID. You remember you had to swipe. You had to swipe the home button to scan your fingerprint sensor. You couldn't
Oh, I
just,
think it.
yeah, they were
Yeah.
awful, and no one used them. And yeah, so and Apple's the first company. You just press the button to unlock your phone, and it unlocks because it senses your fingerprint. And yeah,
I don't think they adopt things until they're already kind of widespread, because that's when it starts to matter that it's good. Because the first adopters will just like, they're just enthusiasts, I guess, and they don't really care if it's not perfect. They're just saying it's a good
well,
first step.
and it
Or
depends on
something.
the thing, right? Like they're not going to do a 5G phone this year because no one has 5G, right? There's no 5G. If 5G isn't a selling point for a device that's going to sell in the tens of millions, um, that then they're not going to do it. Other things like the fingerprint sensor wasn't widespread. They added this because they could do it better than Samsung was doing it. They were the first ones to make a 64-bit phone, which at the time everybody said, "Why would you make a 64-bit phone? That's stupid." You know, People have a lot of misconceptions about 64-bit, thinking that it's only for more than 4 gigs of RAM, and so why would you do this on a phone with, whatever it was at the time, 1 gigabyte of RAM? And it turned out to be a really good thing for them. They do innovate in certain areas, but I don't think they innovate until they're at least confident that they got it right. And they might not get it right, but they're at least confident that they're doing it better than their competition can.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason they also have trouble, like, stepping back from those decisions. Like, I don't know if they're gonna get rid of Face ID because of that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Uh,
I don't think that they would. I don't think they would move towards a fingerprint sensor unless the fingerprint sensor can be maybe as good as Touch ID was on an iPhone 8, or as fast and accurate as Face ID is on an iPhone 10, because they're not going to want that experience to be a downgrade. Which again, that is something that differentiates Apple from most Android manufacturers, right? Because look at the first in-display fingerprint sensors on Android phones; they're awful, and Android phones just went to it because it's like the next thing, and you can have a more edge-to-edge display because you don't have to put a fingerprint sensor on there. And it's like, but the biometric experience got worse from generation to generation there.
yeah, that's the thing. It's exactly what you're saying. The Android manufacturers are willing to have worse performance in order to push for a new technology, and Apple doesn't want to do that. They want to make sure that the experience is consistently good. So when they shifted to Face ID, it was a good experience out of the box. I mean, it got better,
Yeah.
but it was
Oh
already
yeah.
very good at launch.
Yeah.
And so Apple doesn't want to do that kind of experiment with their phones. And I guess part of that might be because they just have one phone every year, so then don't have a lot of time to make things better.
Right.
So then you have this whole year of people saying, this kind of sucks, and that they don't want. So
Yeah. I'm just as like the rumors for this year's iPhones are just that it just seems boring to me that it seems like they're going to stick with the same thing this year. The redesign comes next year, maybe if they do 5G, whatever. Yeah.
yeah, but I saw a render the other day, and the notch did seem smaller. Maybe it was just my eyes, or it's just a render, so you never know if it's
Man,
accurate.
I don't care
But
about the size of the notch. Like they got to kill the notch. It's like everybody else, OnePlus and Samsung and Huawei have all found ways to kill the notch, and they're just going to look like they're behind with, if they have a notch.
That's true. That's true. But yeah, not this year. I don't think anything indicates that. So
Yeah. All right, let's wrap this up.
yeah, that
5
was
stories, and we're probably close to an hour and a half. I don't know because we had to shut down Skype at one point, so the timer is off.
yeah, close to our. That's probably our longest episode. It's just 5 stories.
Yep. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that is good. That is good.
But anything else? I don't think so, right?
No, I don't think anything big happened.
Anything exciting we can tease for next week? I don't think so.
1982.
What?
1982 is
Yeah.
it finally?
Still no 19H2, and next week is a holiday week, so probably not next week either.
Darn it! Wait, what holiday is it next week? I'm not American.
It's
the 4th of July. Okay.
July, yeah. So and that's on a Thursday, so you can bet that Microsoft will be off on Thursday and probably Friday. So maybe on Wednesday, although I somehow doubt it, and maybe second week of July. And now we're looking at 2 months ahead of RTM.
Oh,
why can't they do this? I don't know.
This is terrible. I mean, it could still happen today. That's not. I mean, technically,
it could. Yes.
It's not 1 p.m. or 6 p.m. my time. But
I don't think that they would do it on a Friday though.
Yeah.
Fridays are tough. Fridays are generally for bad news and inconsequential news. It's doing something big on a Friday means that you kind of have to be around on the weekends in case there's a problem. So
yeah, that's true. But they've done it before. I'm just saying because I know they've done it before, but of course.
Well, I mean, but like they could do a build on a Friday, but I think it would be a 28. Like the first 19H2 build, I don't think they would do that news on a Friday. Especially when they haven't talked about it. Like if they had a press release on Tuesday saying, "Hey, 19H2 is coming soon. Here's some ideas we got. Here's why it took so long." But no, there's nothing. So that, like if that news came today, it's probably bad news.
Yeah,
if they announce 19H2 today, like it's something that they want us to forget by Monday. Yeah. So we'll see about that. How do you spell your Twitter handle?
Oh yeah, I'm at IndoSpot. That's INDOSPOT.
All right, I'm at the Rich Woods, and that's it, guys. We'll catch you.
Oh, we're on iTunes now, by the way, in case you
guys,
missed that.
We're on iTunes now.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's it.
We're on Google Podcasts, and even though we didn't submit it, which is great. Yeah.
Saved us some work there. That's nice.
So listen, if you guys are using any podcatchers that we're not on, let us know because we want to be there.
Yeah, just any platform we can be on, we'll try to be on. Just let us know.
Are we on the Windows Phone podcast app?
Is there a Windows Phone podcast app?
Yes, there is. I'm going to pull out a Windows Phone and check right now. All right, we'll catch you guys next week.
All right, see you, everyone.